Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about Prime Minister Modi's visit to Japan. This weekend is going to be very important from a strategic point of view. Prime Minister Modi is making two trips, or rather a trip where he's visiting two important places. He is going to Japan, where he's going to have a bilateral summit with the Prime Minister Ishiba of Japan. And there are many important things that are hopefully going to happen during this meeting, and I will summarize them for you shortly. And then from there, he plans to go to China to attend the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's Leaders Summit, where on Sunday he is scheduled to meet with Xi Jinping. And I think there might also be another meeting with Putin. I haven't seen firm confirmations about Putin's arrival in China, but we do know that there is a bilateral schedule already with Xi Jinping on Sunday between Prime Minister Modi and himself. So let's first talk about the visit to Japan. This is an interesting year, and I think in a couple of weeks or in a couple of months, or definitely before the end of this month, India and Japan are going to switch places on the economic roster. So until now, Japan was the fourth biggest economy in the world by GDP, and India is the fifth biggest. And by the end of this year, that is going to switch. So what is going to happen is India is going to overtake Japan and become the fourth biggest economy by GDP, which will be around 4.2, and Japan will become the fifth. It'll be just about a few billion less than India. So India will be $4.2 trillion and Japan will be around 4.18. So it's an interesting year where I wonder how the Japanese think about it. Obviously, in India, there will be celebrations and people are excited about this. So we will be wondering how the Japanese people think about it. I did try to look for some Japanese opinions, but I did not find any. If you know of any articles written by any scholars or policymakers in Japan as to how they view that Japan has now become, I mean, Japan has gone from being the third to the fourth and fourth to the fifth. The Germans overtook them very recently, that was last year, and now India is overtaking them. There is still much distance with Britain, but at this rate, it is quite possible that Japan will soon be out of the top 10 economies in the world if there is no major course correction, and there is no possibility of that in the near future. I mean, if you look at, for example, debt to GDP ratio, Japan's debt is 250% of its GDP. When people talk about debt problems for India, for the US, which is about 130%, 120%. So for an economy of $30 trillion, our debt is around $37 trillion. But Japan, for an economy of just $4 trillion, its debt is $10 trillion. But it does have investments. But anyway, the agenda is very interesting. One agenda is obviously the review of bilateral relations. How is our trade? How is our economy? How are mutual investments? How are the cultural relations, etc.? So that will be the one aspect of it. The second is review of Quad. They are expected to make a joint statement about Quad, and clearly, with India's deteriorating relations with the United States, there are many questions now about Quad. Is Quad alive yet, or is the Quad dead? India is expected to host the Quad Leaders Summit this year, and a couple of months ago, when Dr. Jaishankar was here in Washington, D.C. to attend the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting, it was clearly announced that Donald Trump had accepted the invitation and was going to attend the summit in India. But now, given all that has happened in the past few weeks, since Donald Trump imposed massive tariffs on India, we don't know what the status of Quad really is. And so we'll see what happens. It is quite possible that maybe JD Vance will come and attend that instead of Trump, or maybe even Trump will come. But anyway, the second issue that they're going to talk about is Quad. The third is the bullet train. It's a big idea that there's basically Japan is going to invest in a bullet train from Mumbai to Ahmedabad by 2030, so in the next 5 years. And of course, the biggest item is that Japan is expected to announce $68 billion of investments in India. Now, it is very interesting that a smaller economy is a smaller economy is going to be investing in a bigger economy. That happens all the time. UAE invests, Saudi Arabia invests, and other places. So there's going to be an announcement that in the next 10 years, Japan is expected to make $68 billion of investments. One of the things that I find very interesting is that when you read the fine print, you find that it is private investment. It's not government investments. So these are private investments. And how can the Prime Minister of Japan guarantee that Honda, Toyota, etc. are going to invest, or who the private companies are? So I think maybe the most logical way in which it works is that a government will ask its own captains of industry and say, what are your prospects? Are you planning to invest in India? Why don't you invest in India? And then so many companies, they say, yeah, we have a plan to invest this much. So they just sum it up together. So I find that very interesting, that especially in democratic societies where the government cannot directly direct economies to do things, like, for example, Trump is trying his best to stop Apple from investing in India, but Apple simply is not playing ball. I mean, Apple has just doubled its investments in India and has increased its iPhone production. Yes, Trump can impose tariffs on iPhones made in India, and that would hurt Apple. But it's not that easy for governments to straight away determine. But anyway, he's going to announce $68 billion of trade. And this is very important because if you look at this list of countries that invest in India, the top countries investing in India are Mauritius, Singapore, USA, Netherlands, and Japan. So now, please keep in mind that Mauritius, Singapore, and Netherlands are not really genuine investments. I mean, the money is real, but these are all what they call as roundabouts, or basically Indians taking money abroad, especially to Mauritius and Singapore, and then bringing that same money back as foreign investments. So, for example, let's say you're a billionaire in India and you want to build a cycle factory and it costs you $1 billion. So instead of directly investing $1 billion in the bicycle factory, what you do is you take this money out, you take it to Mauritius or some other foreign country with whom India has, it's called treaty shopping. So there are some countries with which India has treaties for tax exemptions or benefits. So then you bring the money back, say from Mauritius or Singapore or Netherlands, back into India to invest in the bicycle, and then you get lots of tax benefits, etc. So it's called roundabouting, and so Mauritius, Singapore, and Netherlands are not really serious. So basically, the two biggest investors in India are US and Japan. And if you look at the Japan's total investments has been $43 billion in India since in the last 25 years. So from the beginning of this century, Japan has been investing, and it has invested $43 billion. And the US has invested about $67 billion. So the US is the biggest investor in India, foreign direct investor, followed by Japan. So therefore, it is very clear that the Japanese relationship is very important to India, because Japan has been consistently investing in India. If you remember, the first interesting car that we got, other than Ambassador and Fiat's, was the Maruti Suzuki, and Suzuki started investing in India. Hello, Moses. Once I finish my narrative presentation, then I will be happy to read your comments and take your questions. So hang in there, folks. So that's one thing that to keep in mind, that Japan has been a consistent, a regular investor in India. And so it's a very reliable partner. I just wanted to correct something that's being stated in the media regularly. So you must be reading this, that in this Prime Minister Modi's trip to Japan after 7 years, and it is being emphasized because this is also Prime Minister Modi's trip to China after 7 years. Well, that is not an accurate information because Modi has traveled to Japan several times. He went for the G7 summit, he went for the G20 summit, he went for Abe, the former prime minister's funeral. So, in the past few years, he has been there 4 or 5 times. What they mean by saying that he's going there after 7 years, it is that they are having a bilateral India-Japan bilateral summit after 7 years in Japan. So there was one in Japan in 2018. So in his first term as Prime Minister, Modi came to Japan 4 times in 2018. And then subsequently, there was one, I think, in India, but there have been no other India-Japan bilateral in the last 7 years in Japan. So that is why they say he's going to Japan after 7 years. What they mean is he's going there for the bilateral after 7 years. So the big issue is a discussion of Quad, the $68 billion investment announcement, and the third one is the bullet train. So these are the three main agenda items, and of course, all other discussions of regional issues. I'm sure they're going to sit together and talk about Donald Trump and his tariff policies, which both countries have been at the receiving end of. So it would be very interesting to, I mean, hopefully we will never ever get to know that what their private opinions are with regards to Trump. And if you remember, yet Modi was the fourth head of state to meet with Donald Trump after he was sworn in as president. Ishibara was the third one. So these are the two prime ministers who came very early to meet with Donald Trump. So we will see what happens when they issue the Quad statement. I'm really curious to know what happens. But there are some other issues that I want to share with you. One, first, let me share some data with you, which is very important for you to understand. So, from an investment point of view, if you look at this, this is actual annual investments from India to Japan. So, India to Japan is the yellow color, and from Japan to India is the blue color. So if you look at 2023, that was the best year in terms of Japanese investments in India. It was about $3 billion. So more or less, Japan's investments in India every year are in the range of $2 to $3 billion. So I mean, it went down in 2020, obviously because of COVID, but still $1.5 billion were invested. But again, in 2023, it was less than $2 billion. But if you look at India's investments, they are minuscule. They have never, ever crossed $500 million. So India is not investing in Japan at all. It is Japan that is investing in India. Now, that is a very, I mean, from an obvious point of view, you could say that is because India's economy is doing much better than Japan's. Japan's economy is hardly growing. Like I told you that in 2015, Japan's GDP was $6 trillion. Now it is $4 trillion. So it's a shrinking economy. It's not a growing economy as opposed to India's, which is growing at a 6.5 or 6%. 6.2 is the forecast so far for this year. So India is growing at 6%. Japan may grow at 0.5% or 1% if they are lucky this year. So obviously, it's not very exciting and inviting to invest in Japan. So India's investments in Japan are very, very meager, but Japanese investments in India are naturally much, much more. And so the promise that they're going to invest $68 billion over the next 10 years would be like doubling. So if you take the year 2023, where the investments were about $3.1 billion, so we are going to say that from next year onwards, 2026 onwards, when we look at a graph like this, it should be double the investment. So if they are going to invest $6.8 billion dollars a year, then in the next 10 years it will reach $68 billion. Well, that is a forecast. We will see how that goes. But there's something else that I want to share with you from a data point of view, or which, in terms of numbers, let me just give you, these are the numbers of the Japanese investments: 2 billion, 1.8, 1.79, 3.1, and then 1.36. So far, the investments have dropped significantly. In the previous year, it was just 1.6, and the total investments are about $43 billion. But there is one troubling sign, and I want to share that with you. Let me get it. This is the one. So what this data here shows, this is from the Indian government. A lot of people, when I share information that mainstream media does not share with you, people assume that I'm cooking it up or something like that. So I have now decided to see if possible to also share with you the link. So this is from the Indian Embassy in Tokyo, the government of India's website. So if you don't believe this data, then don't believe the Indian government. All right. So I'm just sharing the data with you that the Indian government has provided. And what is troubling about it is if you look at India's exposed to Japan in the last 5 years, they went up after COVID. It was 4 billion, then it went up to 6 billion. And then from 2021, it is a steady decline. So it goes down from 6.18 to 5.4 billion, then goes down to 5.15 billion, then goes down to 5.1 billion. And remember that these are in nominal numbers. So I'm not adjusting them for inflation. Otherwise, the decline would be steeper decline. So India's exports to Japan are reducing, but Japanese exports to India are steadily on the rise. So in 2020, 2021, it was just $10.9 billion, then went up to 14, then went up to 16, 17, and now it is around 16, so it has gone down a bit. But if you look at the total trade, which is around 21, 22, India has a huge deficit of over 10. So it's like if the total trade is $21 billion, India's exports are only 5, and Japanese are over 16. So there again, India is running a huge trade deficit. Now, one of the problems that India is facing since yesterday is that Donald Trump, people are saying, oh, Donald Trump is stuck. Oh, Trump always chickens out. Well, he didn't chicken out. He did impose the 50% tariffs on India since yesterday. And it's going to hit the Indian exports in a massive way. There's already talks of firing lots and lots of jobs. They are saying about 20 million or 2 million people are going to lose their jobs in India very soon, sadly, because of the exports. I really feel for the poor workers who work in these factories for no fault of their own. They are going to be losing their livelihoods. But can India diversify its exports to Japan? So some of the stuff, I don't know whether the jewelry is jewelry and diamonds and gems, etc., which were being exported to the US, can they be redirected towards Japan to offset the trade deficit here? But remember one thing, because even Japanese government got a pretty good deal of only 15% on its exports. Japan's exports to the US, cars alone are $150 billion. And there is a tariff on cars on 15%. So I'm sure that they will be exporting lesser and fewer cars to the US. And they will be desperate to send them to India. So if you notice, the Japanese see India as a very good market to export their stuff to India. And I think this promise of investments, at some point, somebody in the Modi government is going to say, look, he said, we are a country with huge trade deficits with everybody. With all the top 10 countries, if you see, India has a trade deficit except the US. So if America can impose tariffs and increase tariffs to reduce trade deficit, can we do that? So somebody might look at it and say, oh my God, the Japanese are not buying our stuff. We are buying a lot of Japanese stuff. The Japanese companies are making a lot of money. So let us put some tariffs on Japan or demand that Japan reduces the deficits by buying more stuff from India. I think the Japanese are preempting that by promising to invest a lot of money in the next 10 years in India. And so India is not going to rock that boat because then they could lose those investments. So I think that is what is going on here, which is quite interesting, isn't it? But anyway, we will see what happens. I'm. I will look at this again next year, inshallah, because this is very critical. Because I think the Japanese economy is going to continue shrinking, and they also have a lot of problems. The U.S. tariffs, even at 15%, are going to really hurt, and if they don't fulfill a part of the promise of the $550 billion that they are going to invest in the U.S. Like, for example, if by next year they haven't invested 100 or 50 to $100 billion, then there will be much more serious questions that will be asked of the Japanese by the Trump administration. And these guys, especially the people like Peter Navarro is one of the nastiest persons in the Trump administration, and today he called the Ukraine war as India's war. So people like them could actually turn on Japan the way they have turned on India. So anyway, we will see how this thing goes. I'm very curious. So I'm not very impressed with that bullet train project, whether it comes or not. But these are one-off things. These are vanity projects that the government is going to use them to show off for election purposes, etc. But the big question is, will there be steady doubling of Japanese investments in India? They are averaging less than 3 right now. They have done about 43 in 25 years. So you can do the math for yourself. But that will be a sort of a boost into the Indian economy. It also tells you that the Japanese have confidence in the Indian economy, and that should also help others gain confidence to invest in India's economy. So that's one thing that for us to look out to, what happens in the next 2 days in Japan. And the second one is, what is the actual statement, the wording of the statement on Quad? The Quad paragraph would be very interesting to see. And if there's any reactions there's already lots of reactions here from American commentators on the scheduled meeting with Xi Jinping. I'm curious to see how some of Trump administration's, the government officials, not people. I mean, I'm an American too, so you can see my reaction to this. But I want to see how the administration people talk about this particular meeting on television, or whether they just don't comment on it at all. So that would be very interesting and curious to know. So that's as far as my presentation goes for today, and I'm getting better. I'm trying to aim for 20 minutes, and I did finish in 23. So now I'll be happy to read your comments and questions, etc. And then Sohan Roy, I will do this video. I will record this video. After I finish with the discussion, I will record it in Hindi, and I will post it on my India channel. Hindi. My India channel is Conversations 2025. My main channel is blocked in India. The mother of democracy has blocked my channel because they're afraid of my analysis. Like, for example, I guarantee you that nobody in the mainstream media will tell you in the next 2 days that India's exports to Japan have steadily declined in the last 4 years. The data that I pointed out to you. So that's why they blocked my channel, because I share data. And like I said, that data is from the Indian embassy in Tokyo. You can go and take a look at it. I provided the link also for it. So yeah, but I will post it in my Hindi sometime, maybe. It's already very late in India, so I will post it tonight. So early morning tomorrow, you can see my Hindi commentary. Since I will record it a little while, I will also have some more updates to it. And Vivek, The Japanese negotiator. Well, the Japanese deal has been done, Vivek. So I don't know what the negotiations are about. We will take a look at it. I mean, the agreement was that the three items on the US Japan deal was that the tariffs will be at 15%. If you remember, all the countries which were initially tariffed at 25%, they bought a discount. So Japan paid 550 million to go from 25 to 15, promised to invest $550 billion, and its tariff went from 25 to 15. EU promised to invest $600 billion and buy $750 billion of US oil in the next 3 years, so 250 billion every year. And that is enforceable, I think, by Donald Trump. And so they got a 10% discount from 25 to 15. South Korea went from 25 to 15. They promised, I think, $100 billion of investments. Indonesia went from 40 to 19. They promised to invest $50 billion in the US or buy $50 billion worth of planes and stuff like that. For Japan, the deal was it will invest 50 in the US. It gets a 15% tariff, and Japan reduces all tariffs, like Europe, like South Korea, on American goods to 0%. So that was the deal, and we will see what happens. I will look into it as to why the Japanese negotiator canceled his visit. There are lots of interesting things going on. So, for example, the South Korean president was visiting Donald Trump. At the same time, South Koreans were also meeting with China. And the same thing is happening with Japan. So all these countries are also now scrambling. Basically, they're looking for other markets to redirect some of their exports they are going to lose. The US in the second quarter, if you look at the US economy in the first quarter, it showed 0.5% decline. In the GDP shrunk by 0.5% in the first quarter. But in the second quarter, the US GDP grew by 3%, which is terrific for such a big economy. Like the US is $30 trillion. So 3% of $30 trillion comes to pretty high, $90 billion. $900 billion. So close to $1 trillion. So the US economy grew by that much in the second quarter. But what was interesting is that GDP is composed of domestic government spending, investments, domestic consumption, and trade deficit. If it is negative, it reduces the GDP growth rate. And if it is positive, then it increases your GDP growth rate. So because of tariffs, imports into the US have been reduced. As a result of that, the US is showing higher growth rates. So we will see what happens going forward. Sir, can the GST reforms offset the US tariff impact on GDP? Yes, it has to. This is Ananya Bhasina. That's a good comment. Let me give you an example. I have a very good friend who exports natural oils to the US. So he has a small company and he exports oil to the US. So I asked him, do you sell at home? He said, no, yeah, it's such a pain, this GST, stupid business. You have to predict how much you're going to do. You have to pay in advance. So a lot of people find the GST very exploitative, very expensive, 18%. And it's a pain generally. So he decided not to sell in India at all because of this, to avoid the pain of dealing with the GST administration and actually the rate, which is very high. And so he says, I just export. So I produce only what I can export, and says there's no GST. He just bypassed the GST to export all that natural oil to the US. Maybe I should call him tonight and ask him what his plans are, because now, because of 50% tariffs, and remember, it's not just 50%. It is on some items, it is less. Like iPhones have no tariffs, pharmaceutical stuff haven't got the tariffs. But on a lot of things, it's much more than 50. Like, for example, solar cells, the tariff is 64%. On some stuff, it is 62%, and so on and so forth. So those who can't sell now abroad, they will want to sell at home, or they'll have to shut down. And so if GST reforms take place, if they make GST easy, less expensive, less headache, less pain, then this friend of mine who may not be able to export as much oil as possible to the US may decide, okay, I'm going to now do it at home because GST is less of a headache. I One of my classmates who's an engineer who does small manufacturing, and he makes small things, small engineering stuff, and he says that most of his time is wasted in just dealing with GST. He says, I'm not big enough to hire a company to do all that stuff for me, so I have to do it myself. I'm leading marketing, I'm leading. So he's a small scale industry, and for him, it is a huge, huge pain, GST. So if GST reforms take place, uh, I think it will offset some of the problems of demand. So it might increase domestic consumption and also motivate people to sell at home. Patel, India wants a permanent seat at the UNSC, but do you think it really deserves it? No, India doesn't deserve it at all. India does not play any role. Look at India's role with regards to Gaza. India's seat at the UN Security Council will be Israel's second vote. And so I don't think India has not done anything for promoting peace. India has not played a role with regards to Iran security problems. If India was in the Security Council on the Iran issue, what would India do when Israel and the US attacked Iran? Nothing. It would not be the global voice of the South. India will be the global voice of Israel. And so I don't think India deserves it. At least this government, as long as the Modi and BJP government is in power, India does not deserve a UN Security Council position. Plus, now with all the relations that they are ruining with the US, China will veto it, and the US will veto it, that's it. You will have two vetoes straight up there. And while Russia and France have said that they support India's position, there has never been a vote on it, right? So we don't know how this. I'm willing to bet that if the US makes it very clear that it's going to vote no, and China says it's going to vote no, then Britain and France will not waste their position by just voting yes on a resolution that is not going to pass. So they'll just abstain. So I don't think that's going to happen. But here the economy is predicted due to tariff GDP may come down to 6. Sharif, that 6.2 calculation is not after tariffs. That is before tariffs. So if you remember, Donald Trump imposed tariffs in two stages. First, he said 25% are reciprocal tariffs, and then the second 25% are not actually tariffs. They are like secondary sanctions. So the estimate is from 0.4 to 0.7, I have seen. So if you work from 6.5 and say, okay, the tariffs are going to cause 0.7, then it goes to 5.8. And the lowest I have seen is 0.4 or 0.3. So if you go say 0.3, then it'll go from 6.5 to 6.2, and your figure will be the accurate one. But I think that 0.3 is from 6.2. Now that is going to be very, very interesting number. If India, I hope not. I hope it's 6.1 at least, yeah. But if it becomes 5.9, and if China gets 5%, then it'll look as if both are growing at 5%, you know. So that is, I just hope that India remains in the 6 and China remains in 5, or even goes down, because China is also having some other problems. But today there was a huge report as to how China has really pushed a lot of products into Africa. So it's quite possible that Chinese, China's best export year was after the Americans and Europeans started China plus one and delinking and de-risking strategies, because China diversified very quickly, and it went to ASEAN and Africa. So we will see what happens, but let's hope that, that it doesn't have that much big impact, and we finish at least 6.1. Thank you, Parver Kadan. Kadan, thank you very much. Due to Trump's tariffs, there's going to be a tsunami on yes. See, I hate sanctions. A couple of years ago, I had a big fight with some of the Indian Muslim lobbies in the US, because After NRC and CAA, there were some American Muslim organizations which were lobbying for sanctions on India. And I was very upset about it. I refused to endorse it. In fact, I was very much opposed. I'm opposed to any sanctions on India, and I'll tell you why. I'm opposed to any sanctions on any country because what happens is the rich, the powerful, and the government does not suffer from sanctions. It is only the poor and the weakest sections of a society that will suffer. So, for example, all these tariffs on the US, they're not going to impact people who make more than 2 lakh rupees a month. For people who are making 2 lakh rupees, 1 lakh rupees, 5 lakh rupees a month, they're not going to be impacted. They're all in the service industry. It's only people who are in manufacturing, in the jewelry industry, the shrimp fishermen, people who are making carpets. There was an interesting article, I think, in New York Times or Bloomberg, which interviewed carpet makers in Uttar Pradesh. They are horrified. They said, we struggle to compete. India sends a lot of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of carpets in the US, but now a $500 carpet is now going to cost something like $1,100, $1,200. It is definitely going to impact sales. So it's the poor workers who are going to lose their jobs. And so far, the Indian government has not come up with any plan. They have 2 plans. They are saying that we will provide some support to small-scale industries which are going to lose their export markets in the US, but they have not said what that is, because this has already happened. It happened yesterday, right? Already people in the jewelry industry have started firing people because they don't have orders. So the Indian government has not yet come up with plans on what to do with how to support these small scale. Like, how is India going to support the carpet makers if America is not importing those carpets, or that they're not getting orders? The second thing is that India is trying to help them diversify. So I think when Modi goes to Japan, if instead of telling the Japanese, instead of investing $6.8 million, why don't you invest directly in these industries which are impacted by Donald Trump's tariffs? Now, that would be very difficult to do because even if they are profitable potentially, how are they going to profit? So somehow when Modi travels to all these countries, like he was so far, he should have tried to find alternative markets for those who have been exporting to the US. That is what China started doing. And because China was doing that, it has already kind of cornered all the markets where India will now have to go, like Africa, ASEAN countries, etc. Plus, India in ASEAN is not part of RCEP, the biggest trading bloc in the world. India stayed out of it. So they are all going to prefer China because China is part of RCEP. So ASEAN is going to be far more difficult. But Africa, yes, Africa, Latin America, India should focus on that. Hi, Christopher. Christopher is, I have met Christopher in a Zoom meeting. He's a member of Conversations, and so that's nice to meet with you again. I don't know what you're talking about. I am very proud to be Indian. I just don't give a shit about Modi and the BJP. Your problem is that you confuse India with Modi. I don't. Okay? There was India before Modi, and by God, there will be a much better and beautiful India after Modi. I don't know what you're going to do when Modi retires or dies, but let me tell you that. Okay? What, Swami? What is rubbish? I did a whole show on that. I called Trump a communist. Go and take a look at the show in which I said, who is the biggest communist, Mamdani, Modi, or Trump? And in that, I talked about Trump's ownership of 10% of Intel. It is like owning the mode of production, like they do. That's a communist owning public sector. It is trying to make Intel a public sector company. He's the biggest shareholder now, the US, and then taking 15% profit from NVIDIA. for and giving them license to sell chips to China. I mean, I've already done that. Just because you have not seen my shows, and I've done it in both languages, in Hindi and English, so you have no excuse to come here and make these comments highly ill-informed. Uh, I don't know, Raghav. I've not looked at CPEC that much. Usually, the discussions of CPEC is about how much the investments were. They were about 64, and then it has gone up to $80 billion. Now, CPEC is expanding to include Afghanistan and maybe even Iran. We'll see. Uh, संतोष, मैं इस शो ख़त्म होने के बाद जापान के ऊपर प्रीव्यू हिंदी में रिकॉर्ड करूँगा और उसको मैं अपने इंडिया चैनल पे अपलोड करूँगा। और मुझे लगता है अगर आप हिंदुस्तान में हैं तो यू आर सीइंग मी ऑन दैट चैनल। ये मैं इसको मल्टीपल चैनल्स पे इसको करंटली लाइव हूँ। मैं मेरे दोनों चैनल्स पे लाइव हूँ और लिंक्डइन पे भी लाइव हूँ। तो वो आप थोड़ा सब्र करें। इन अनदर 6 to 8 hours आई विल हैव इट हिंदी में 6-7 घंटे में। इट इज़ इम्पॉर्टेंट। जो डेटा मैं आपके साथ शेयर कर रहा हूँ उसको जानना ज़रूरी है। I don't know what people keep commenting. Vivek, it's a very good question. Is Quad still a good gathering? The question is not whether it's still a good gathering. The question is whether it is a gathering at all. And we will not know that until, see, this is already end of August, right? So they have, I think initially they had said that the Quad summit will be in September. And then they said, no, it's going to be in November. So there is no date yet, a firm date for the Quad heads of states. Trump doesn't talk about going to India at all. He hasn't mentioned it even once in the so many weeks. It was only Marco Rubio who told Jaishankar that Trump will be coming for the Quad summit, and that was 2 months ago, while the trade negotiations were still going on. So the key is Quad. If America doesn't come, there is no Quad. First, it will become a trialogue, and then, I mean, Australia, Japan, it will be over. It will be done completely. Plus, if you go back in May, I saw an article in Japan Times in which one of the Japanese experts was complaining that India was more focused on I2U2 than Quad, which means India was turning more towards UAE, Israel, and America than Japan, Australia, and Quad. So before this, already the Japanese were not sure about where India was. But I think India is trying to keep an option to continue to go back. Maybe if Trump changes his mind, then India can go back running to Washington. And that's why they are keeping the Quad alive, I think. And India, I think, will announce a Quad summit if first they will probably consult again with the US in private. And if Donald Trump confirms that he's coming, then they will announce a Quad leaders summit. But if they don't get a confirmation, then I don't think we will hear anything about the Quad summit. But Trump is talking about going to China quite a bit. And even yesterday, he talked a lot about going to China. And he's saying that Xi Jinping has invited him. He's thinking, and previously, they had announced that a big delegation of the US will be going with Trump to China. China also, Japan, sorry, Trump also got into a big trouble with the MAGA crowd yesterday because he said, I'm going to allow 600,000 Chinese students in the US. Right now, there are 277,000 students. That was 2 or 3 months ago. So we don't know how many Chinese students' visas have been canceled, how many of them have been forced to go back to China. But now Trump says he's going to allow 600,000. While the embassies are not giving visas, the State Department is canceling visas. Trump is saying, I'm welcoming. So we'll see what happens, because a lot of things that Trump is saying may not translate into policy, but some things are. So it's a bit difficult to predict which of his statements will become policy and which of his statements will not become policies, you know. दादाजी ये तो होगा ही ना, कि क्योंकि हमारा, yeah, Ashish, I agree with you. Oh, Lala Khan, that's an interesting question. Does America want regime change in India? Actually, I don't know where you are. Well, from the flag, it appears that you are in India. So the more interesting discussion that is going on in India is about whether RSS wants regime change in India, whether they want to get rid of Modi and bring in a new face. In fact, it is quite possible that RSS might want to get rid of uh, all three of them. That is Modi, Amit Shah, and Dr. Jai Shankar. So there's all of these discussions going on. This is September 10th is Mohan Bhagwat's birthday. He will be 75. He's expected to retire. And on the 17th of September, Modi will be 75. It was Modi who made the rule that everybody should retire at 75. But obviously, he's not going to retire at 75. So, will there be enough pressure on Modi to retire? I think the Bihar election is critical. If BJP does not win the Bihar elections, then there will be a lot more pressure from inside the government on Modi. The US really, I mean, Donald Trump currently is very unhappy with Modi personally because of the phone call that they had on June 21st, I think. And other than that, there are some other reasons why they are angry. So, but you must remember that people like Rahul Gandhi and Congress, etc., are more critical of the US. The most pro-America government has been the Modi government. And the most pro-America constituency is the Hindutva constituency. The RSS and Hindu nationalists, they are the most pro-America people in India. The rest are all, socialist, soft communists. They are very critical of the US. So for the US, the best government for the US is the Modi government. So they don't want regime change. In fact, if Rahul Gandhi becomes prime minister, then I think the US will be more inclined to try a regime change in India, but they will want to keep Modi. And hello, AK. Thank you for becoming member. Welcome back. And thank you, Spiritual Guru, for your comment. H1 visa should get tougher for India. Getting H1B is going to be tougher, but also renewing H1B is going to be tougher. See, there are several things happening, right? So for example, Doge came and fired a lot of people. So yesterday, the State Department did something really, really stupid. They fired a lot of State Department people a month ago. And then yesterday, they announced promotions, and the people who had been laid off have been promoted. So imagine that. You've already fired these people, then a month later, you're promoting them. They're not even on your staff, and you're promoting them to higher ranks. So what has happened is the calculation of their performance came and they say, oh, they're doing great, let's promote them. But you had already fired them. So they are understaffed. So this mistake also happened because they have less staff in the State Department, in embassies, everywhere. So just going ahead and doing with H1B because the Homeland Security and the State Department and the new conditions that the administration is taking longer. So if you lose your job and you need to transfer your H1 to another, it may not happen in the time that is required. So a lot of people are getting worried. They might have to leave the country. So I think the restrictions are going to be strong. And plus H1B has been exploited, especially by India in many ways. Apparently, there's another visa called L1 or something, which is for managers and not for programmers. So if you are a technical expert, you come on H1 visa. If you're a manager type, you come on a different visa. So what TCS and Wipro and others were doing was they were sending technical people under different visas, and then they were paying them at the technical price. So they were violating a lot of regulations in the US. That is also an investigation that is going on, which can be a problem. But it is going to be easy to see what is going to happen. H1B people are also getting very less pay increasingly. So some of the salaries that they get, American students will not take those jobs. So for companies who are not using H1B, One is, if you are really skillful, then there's no choice. You have to bring the person that you want. But otherwise, the companies will have to pay more for Americans to get to hire for those jobs, and that is also going to become a little bit of a problem in this. We'll see. It's going to take about 6 months for all of this to settle down, and so we get an idea of what is happening, etc. And Usman Mughal, there are 243 people watching. This is being broadcast on many channels, so that's fine. But they are watching. That's good. I agree with you, spiritual again. Good evening, AK. How are you? Any other comments? Yeah, footwear, shoes, everything, and that's 50% on that. It's not just that; it's on those stories. But see, if nobody buys Kolhapur chappal in America, it's not a problem. We are getting flip flops from. We'll get flip flop from Japan, or we'll get flip flop from Pakistan. Pakistanis also make chappals like Kolhapuri chappals. That will come at 19%. We might get some on even slightly lower tariffs from other countries, which are at 15%. So I think that it's not a problem. Like, it's only China with its magnets and rare earth materials is able to push back. The only important thing that India really sends is pharmaceuticals, especially generic drugs. So India sells. It is very interesting. Listen to this very carefully. In terms of volume, India is sending 47% of all drugs that America imports. Okay? So what India is importing, what US is importing, nearly half of the drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, not drugs as in drugs, pharmaceuticals, medicines, are coming from India. But in terms of price, cost, it's only 6%. So 94%, which is the more expensive medicines in US is importing from somewhere else. So for the US, they are looking at it and saying, it's right now there is no tariffs on pharmaceuticals. So that is fine. But Trump, a few months ago or a month or so ago, said he's going to impose 200% tariffs on medicine. He thinks that pharmacies are a national security thing and they should be made in America, no matter how much it costs. So, all right, I'm reaching the 1 hour mark. Oh, Vatsal Sharma. And just as I'm thinking of leaving, someone asks a good question. Vatsal Sharma. Very good. So, Vatsal, I did a show a couple of days ago, and that show is being actually, I wanted to share with you that I'm also now kind of, what do you call it? Giving my show to other bigger channels. So Public India, for example, it's a big channel. It has more than 1.5 million subscribers. My India channel is, which I started about 2 months ago. Alhamdulillah, it has reached 25,000 subscribers. Please subscribe. I want to reach 50,000 in India before the end of this year. But I've decided to give my programs to bigger channels. So sometimes Satya Hindi carries my shows, but now Public India will be carrying my show. So in that, before that, I also did a show where I did it both in English and Hindi, so you can watch it on any channel, about whether it's called China Gives a Warning to India. This happened just 2 days ago on the Taiwan issue. So India is again playing on both sides, so it wants to be friendly with China, but also wants to be friendly with Taiwan, and the Chinese don't like that at all. So they literally issued a warning saying that if you do not recognize that Taiwan is part of China, then it will not improve our relations. So it's very angry statement by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a spokesperson. So I have all of that in that video. You can just go back and see. It's maybe the last 3 or 4 videos you will see it. The title is in English, China Warns India. So yes, that's a very good question. So Modi is now going there, and I wonder if Xi Jinping will bluntly ask him, if I was Xi Jinping, I will ask him, so what is your position on Taiwan? I want a very specific answer, not a vague answer like we have not changed our policy. No, is Taiwan part of China or not? And I would do that if I was Xi Jinping, and then I will determine where I will go forward. And I would rather ask that in front of camera, because Modi in private might say yes, and then in public not say so. So we will see what happens. But that's a very good question. And plus, if Modi and Ishiba, the Japanese prime minister, if they give a very strong pro-Quad statement, then the Chinese will interpret that as saying, "Oh, Modi is keeping the back door open to America." So if Trump changes his mind or we have a new president, then India will run back to America because there are so many issues with China. China claims Ladakh, China claims Arunachal Pradesh, China controls, a small area of India, Aksai Chin. So there are a lot of border issues with China. Plus, China, if you notice this, look at this slide. Where is China in this? China is not an investor in India. China is not investing in India at all. It's not in the top 10. So it's not investing in India, and they are saying that it is creating some barriers to India's growth. There were reports that China has ordered all the technicians who work in India's Apple factories to come back to China last month. So China is creating barriers to India's development. I spoke to a Chinese scholar, and he said, we're not worried about India militarily because they don't think India is militarily strong. And after Operation Sindoor, I think they feel confirmed that India is not a military threat to China. But they do see India as an economic threat to China, especially if the China plus one policy would become successful. But unfortunately for India, the China plus one policy is being exploited better by Vietnam and Mexico. So if you go and see, a lot of investments have gone into Vietnam and Mexico more than India. And the trade between Vietnam and the US and Mexico and the US has increased significantly. Mexico is the biggest trading partner of the US now, bigger than Europe and bigger than China. And Vietnam's has got a good deal, just 20% tariffs. Himanshu Prasad Dash, how are you, Himanshu? Can Japan become for India what the US already is? Well, Japan is a strategic partner, isn't it? India and Japan are the two biggest democracies in Asia. They are also the top, in the world, they are the top 5 economies, 2 of them. And then in Asia, they are also in the second and third spots in terms of economic size. So plus, like I said, they have trade, but the trade between India and Japan is not very high. If you look at India-China trade, and if you add Hong Kong to it, it's $160 billion. Without Hong Kong, it is about $130 billion, India and China. And if you look at India and US, it is $130 plus billion. And if you add services to it, it is over $200 billion between India and US. But with Japan, it's just $22 billion. So China and US are 6 times bigger than Japan as a trading partner. Plus, Japan's population is just 125 million. It is 1/3 of the US and less than 1/10 of China. So how much bigger market it is. Plus, the economy is not growing. That's another problem, right? So I don't think Japan can replace India as a strategic partner. US straight up, but it can offset something if India can export more to Japan. Then maybe that is the only benefit I see. And if those investments from Japan keep coming into India, that is the second benefit. But if you notice, like I showed you, that the exports from India to Japan have been reducing. So India exported $6 billion in 2021, and then it went to 5.48, 5.15, 5.1. It is declining. So while India's trade with the US was going up, but how is this going to be, offset, it is difficult, but it's a good idea. Rohit, how are you doing? Rohit is also a member. uh, Hi Rohit, how are you? I'm seeing yours and I'm answering it. I think you're on the India channel. I think no, I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't tell which channel. So I'm getting questions from three sources: LinkedIn, and my global and local challenge. So I can see Himanshu Prasad Dash. These are all members of Conversation and my dear friends. Yes, I do. I'm not seeing comments we are discussing now. Oh yeah, that is true. Yes, you are not seeing those comments because of they're on a different channel. I'll try to see if I can find some way of dealing with that situation. AK has become a new member. I thought AK was already a member. Lakshmi, how are you, Lakshmi? Yeah, hello, Dr. Khan. I'm doing fine. Uh, Good evening to all of you. All right. Rabish Verma, thank you very much. You're also a member. A lot of members are here. I'm very happy with you. I just want to tell the members that I'm traveling to Chicago and I will be in Chicago next 3 days. If you're in Chicago, definitely send me a message at askprofkhan@gmail.com and we will try to see if we can have a cup of tea. I'm at a convention, so I won't be able to schedule the Zoom meeting for this weekend. I will try to do it for next weekend. Uh, and lots of interesting comments, discussions. All right, guys, 1 hour. And so thank you very much for watching Conversations. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. I'm sure all of you have WhatsApp groups. Please forward this on your WhatsApp groups. And please ask people to subscribe. I want to reach, inshallah, 200,000 subscribers on my global channel. And 50,000 on the India channel. The India channel is growing faster. I'm now getting more views for my smaller channel than the bigger channel. But nevertheless, I really need your help. So please support Conversations. And thank you very much, all of you. Bye.